Breaking. President HH flies to Tanzania for Samia Suluhu's inauguration. What's really behind the trip? Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of the InspirAfrica official. I'm Nakash. What a week it has been across our continent. From diplomatic movements to political earthquakes, the story of Africa continues to unfold in ways that challenge our understanding of leadership, democracy, and regional solidarity. But today, we bring you a story that raises more questions than answers. A story about choices, about silence, about what it means to stand in solidarity when the ground beneath your neighbor's feet is stained with blood. This morning, Monday, November 3rd, 2025, President Hakainde Hichilema of Zambia departed Lusaka for Dodoma, Tanzania. His mission: to attend the inauguration of President Samia Suluhu Hassan. A ceremony, a celebration, the swearing-in of a leader who, according to official results, won 98% of the vote. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. As President Hichilema's plane touched down on Tanzanian soil, the nation he came to honor was shrouded in an eerie silence. A total internet blackout. Streets emptied by curfews. And according to opposition figures, hundreds, yes, hundreds, of citizens lying dead, their lives extinguished by security forces in the aftermath of what many are calling a sham election. So we must ask, what is President HH really doing in Tanzania? Is this simply diplomatic protocol, or is it something more calculated? When a leader who has positioned himself as a champion of democracy in Africa chooses to legitimize a ceremony that the opposition has rejected, what message does that send? When bodies are still being counted and the internet remains dark so that the world cannot see what's happening, is attendance at such an inauguration an act of solidarity with a fellow leader, or a betrayal of the very democratic principles that brought you to power? And perhaps most troubling of all, in a region crying out for moral leadership, when does silence become complicity? When does diplomatic courtesy cross the line into endorsement of repression? And what does it cost a nation's soul when its president flies to celebrate a victory that may have been written in the blood of protesters? These are the questions that haunt us today. These are the shadows that follow President Hichilema's plane across the border. The revelation came to light in the early hours of Monday, November 3rd, 2025, when the Zambian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation issued a brief press statement confirming President Hichilema's departure. To understand the gravity of this moment, we must rewind the clock just 5 days. On Wednesday, October 29th, 2025, Tanzania held its general election. President Samia Suluhu Hassan, the incumbent, was seeking re-election. But this was no ordinary electoral contest. The main opposition party, Chadema, had been barred from participating. Their leader, Tundu Lissu, was arrested and charged with treason in the lead-up to the vote. Opposition candidate Luhaga Mpina was similarly barred from running by the Independent National Electoral Commission. When election day arrived, protests erupted across Tanzania. Citizens took to the streets to reject what they saw as a predetermined outcome, a democratic process reduced to theater. The government's response was swift and brutal. The military was deployed. A nationwide curfew was imposed. And then, something unprecedented. A total internet blackout descended over the entire country, severing Tanzania from the outside world. By Saturday, November 1st, just 2 days after the election, Tanzania's Electoral Commission announced the results. Samia Suluhu Hassan had won with 98% of the vote. 98%. A figure so overwhelming that it defied the basic mathematics of democratic competition. The opposition immediately rejected the results, calling the election a sham and demanding fresh polls. But the most chilling revelation came from Chadema. According to the opposition party, hundreds of Tanzanians had been killed by security forces during the post-election violence. Not tens. Hundreds. While the government denied these claims, the internet blackout meant that no independent verification was possible. No videos, no photographs, no witness testimonies making it past Tanzania's digital borders. Despite all of this, the violence, the deaths, the blackout, the rejection by the opposition, the inauguration was scheduled for Monday, November 3rd at State House Chamwino in Dodoma. Not at Jamhuri Stadium as is customary, but behind closed doors. State television announced that the public would not be permitted to attend. It was to this ceremony that President Hakainde Hichilema chose to travel. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs statement was sterile in its brevity. It mentioned nothing of the unrest, nothing of the alleged casualties, nothing of the internet shutdown still in effect as HH's plane departed. Instead, it spoke only of excellent relationship and strong historical ties between Zambia and the United Republic of Tanzania. The statement was signed by Acting Minister Collins Ndzovu on November 2nd. Before his departure, President Hichilema posted a message on Facebook. "Good morning, fellow citizens. We have left for the United Republic of Tanzania to attend the inauguration of that country's president-elect, Her Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan. Zambia and Tanzania enjoy a historical relationship in many sectors, dating back to pre-independence days. We thank you for your usual prayers as we travel to attend this important ceremony." Prayers. Historical relationships. Important ceremony. Not a word about the blood still drying on Tanzanian streets. The starkest evidence of what was happening in Tanzania came from those who dared to speak despite the silencing. When pressed about the death toll, a Chadema spokesperson issued a statement that sent shockwaves through East Africa. Hundreds were killed by security forces. Hundreds. The government can deny it all they want, but we have names, we have families mourning, we have empty chairs at dinner tables across this nation. State media, by contrast, painted a very different picture. The official narrative focused entirely on the mechanics of the inauguration. Officials and foreign dignitaries will gather at State House in Dodoma, the state broadcaster announced, carefully curating which facts would be shared with whatever audience could still access information. Rather than at a stadium as usual, they added, without explaining why the celebration of democracy needed to be hidden from the public. President Hichilema himself kept his public statements brief and non-committal. His Facebook post on the morning of departure struck a tone of diplomatic normalcy that seemed jarringly disconnected from the reality on the ground. "We have left for the United Republic of Tanzania," he wrote, his words floating in the digital ether while Tanzania's own citizens were cut off from that same internet. To attend the inauguration of that country's president-elect, Her Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan. President-elect. The term itself was loaded. By using it, was HH legitimizing a process that half of Tanzania and much of the international community had already rejected? Acting Foreign Minister Collins Ndzovu's official statement was even more carefully calibrated. Reading from the ministry's press release, observers noted what was present and what was conspicuously absent. The invitation signifies excellent relationship and strong historical ties between Zambia and the United Republic of Tanzania, Ndzovu stated. Not a single mention of democratic concerns. Not one reference to the violence. Not even an acknowledgement that anything might be amiss in the country his president was visiting. This diplomatic silence stood in sharp contrast to the urgent warnings coming from human rights observers and opposition figures. One analyst, speaking on condition of anonymity due to security concerns, captured the tension. How do you celebrate democracy in a country where the internet is shut down so the world can't see what's really happening? How do you attend an inauguration when the opposition says hundreds are dead and you can't even verify it because all communication channels are blocked? Perhaps most revealing were the words President Hichilema chose not to say. In his relatively short tenure, HH had built a reputation as someone who wasn't afraid to speak about democratic values. He had condemned authoritarianism elsewhere. He had positioned Zambia as a beacon for good governance in the region. Yet on Tanzania, his public statements offered only pleasantries about historical ties and prayers for safe travel. The international community's response was mixed, but some diplomats were less diplomatic. While most heads of state planning to attend the inauguration remained silent, civil society voices grew louder. "This is a test case," one regional democracy advocate stated. "We're watching how institutions and leaders respond when there's visible public contestation under security pressure." President Hichilema has said in multiple forums that Zambia remains committed to rule-based administration and open political competition. His attendance in Dodoma will show whether those were just words. The decision to attend Samia Suluhu's inauguration sits at the intersection of multiple competing pressures that define modern African geopolitics. First, there's the weight of history. The Tanzania-Zambia relationship is not merely diplomatic, it's foundational to both nations' identities. The Tazara Railway, built with Chinese assistance in the 1970s, remains a symbol of Pan-African cooperation and liberation-era solidarity. When Tanzania supported Zambian independence struggles and provided refuge to liberation movements, bonds were forged that transcend individual leaders. President Hichilema himself referenced these ties, and they are real. But history cuts both ways. That same liberation heritage came with a commitment to self-determination, to the sovereignty of the people, to the principle that power derives from the consent of the governed. If Zambia honors Tanzania's past, must it not also question when Tanzania's present contradicts that legacy? Second, we must examine the question through the lens of Zambia's evolving foreign policy under Hichilema. Since taking office in 2021, HH has positioned himself as a different kind of African leader. One who can work with the West without becoming a puppet, one who can maintain relations with China without sacrificing sovereignty, one who champions democracy and human rights both at home and in regional forums. This balancing act has won him praise from Western capitals. US officials have called him a partner in promoting democracy. The UK has lauded his economic reforms. International financial institutions have held up Zambia as an example of post-debt crisis recovery done right. But this reputation now faces a crucial test. As one political analyst observed, you can't be the democratic champion of Southern Africa on Monday and attend the coronation of authoritarianism on Tuesday. Or maybe you can, but then people will ask what the championship was really worth. Third, there's the regional dimension. Hichilema is not the only leader attending this inauguration. President Emerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe sent a congratulatory letter praising Suluhu's visionary leadership and describing her 98% victory as a reflection of the trust and confidence that the people of Tanzania have in her. Multiple African heads of state were expected in Dodoma. By attending, Hichilema aligns himself with a regional consensus that prioritizes stability and state-to-state relations over internal democratic processes. But this is precisely what concerns democracy advocates. The pattern is familiar across the continent. Disputed elections followed by regional bodies and neighboring states quickly legitimizing questionable outcomes in the name of stability and non-interference. From the African Union to SADC to individual capitals, there's often a closing of ranks around sitting presidents regardless of the means by which they maintain power. Is Hichilema simply acknowledging political reality, or is he helping to perpetuate a system that ultimately weakens the democratic foundation he claims to champion? Fourth, we cannot ignore the economic calculus. Tanzania is Zambia's neighbor and economic partner. Trade routes, infrastructure projects, and regional integration schemes all depend on functional state-to-state relations. Snubbing an inauguration, even a controversial one, could have practical costs. Diplomats would point out that attending a ceremony doesn't necessarily mean endorsing everything a government does. It means maintaining channels of communication and influence. Yet this argument has limits. At what point does pragmatism become moral compromise? When the death toll reaches what number does economic interest become insufficient justification? These are not abstract questions. They're the moral calculations leaders must make in real time. There's also a domestic political dimension within Zambia itself. While President Hichilema enjoys international acclaim, criticism has been growing at home. Some Zambians feel he's more concerned with his image abroad than with delivering for citizens at home. His attendance at this inauguration could fuel those perceptions. He'll fly to Tanzania to celebrate a dictator, critics might say. But what's he doing about the cost of living in Lusaka? Finally, we must consider what this moment reveals about the state of democracy in Africa more broadly. Tanzania under Samia Suluhu Hassan represents a cautionary tale. When she first took office in 2021 after the death of John Magufuli, there was genuine hope. She lifted some of her predecessors' repressive policies. She spoke about opening up political space. International observers praised her early moves. But over time, the trajectory reversed. Opposition leaders were arrested. Critics disappeared. And now, an election that produced a 98% victory amid violence, internet blackouts, and opposition exclusion. The Economist called it state brutality. Human rights organizations documented the deterioration. The signs were clear long before Election Day. What does it say about regional leadership when such a trajectory prompts not intervention or even public criticism, but attendance at the victory celebration? As we close today's coverage, we're left with questions that extend far beyond one plane flight to Dodoma. President Hakainde Hichilema's decision to attend Samia Suluhu Hassan's inauguration is not just about one ceremony on one day. It's about the choices leaders make when principles collide with pragmatism. It's about whether the new generation of African leaders will break the old patterns or simply replicate them with better public relations. History will judge these decisions, not by the press statements or the diplomatic niceties, but by their consequences. When future scholars write about this era, they will ask, did African leaders use their influence to strengthen democracy or to legitimize its erosion? Did they speak up when it mattered, or did they prioritize stability and trade deals over the lives and freedoms of ordinary people? For now, as President HH stands in that ceremony hall in Dodoma, as he witnesses President Suluhu take the oath of office, as he shakes hands and exchanges pleasantries with other dignitaries, somewhere in Tanzania the internet remains dark. Families still mourn loved ones whose deaths the government denies. Opposition figures still languish in detention. And citizens still wonder if their voices will ever truly matter. The question we leave you with today is not a simple one. What would you have your leader do? When history calls, when the easy path leads one way and the right path leads another, what do we demand of those we elect to represent us? Thank you for watching another edition of InspirAfrica Official. This is a story that will continue to unfold in the coming days and weeks. We want to hear from you. What do you think about President HH's decision to attend this inauguration? Do you see it as diplomatic necessity or democratic betrayal? Join the conversation in the comments below. We'll be back tomorrow with more coverage of the stories that shape our continent, the stories that matter.